There's a event. I think there's actually this in Australia too, called Fuck Ups. I don't know if you guys have that.
Fuck Up Nights.
Yeah, Fuck Up Nights.
Nights.
Yeah, okay, so you guys have it. It's
Yeah.
it's international and they embrace failure. All right, welcome everybody to the Founders Korner. Today's episode, I have a very special guest all the way from Australia who is actually both a founder herself and also a writer, a book that I will explain what it is in a minute. Her name is Sangeeta Mulchandani, and she is the founder of Jumpstart Studio, which she helps and guides startups to make sure they go from idea to success. I know, very similar to what we're doing. That's why I love having her on this podcast. And also, she is the writer of Start Right, which is basically her guide to make sure you choose the right business path and be able to start your project and company correctly from the start. Sangeeta, welcome. I'm very excited to have you on here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, Sangeeta, look, I want your story because you've been doing this for about 4 years now. I'm sure you've seen plenty of startups go through your door. Tell me how you got started. Why are you doing this? What excites you?
Yeah, great question. So, look, I love working with startups. I think it's an itch, right? Entrepreneurship is an itch. Just you've got to scratch it. And so I spent a majority of my 20s and early 30s working for corporates, for large corporates, and climbing the corporate ladder, doing extremely well for myself. But I got to a point in life where I just wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy, and I just needed to find more purpose in life. I thought starting my own businesses would be something that would give me that purpose. And so in 2019, I decided.
You had the itch.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Look, I come from a business family. Both my parents are entrepreneurs. My grandparents are entrepreneurs.
Oh, I love that.
So, I've been raised in a family where I've watched entrepreneurship really closely. I've worked with them, ever since I was a kid. I've priced, products. I've sold products. I've learned how to do sales. I've learned how to manage, stores and things like that. So I think entrepreneurship is in the blood, if you like. But then I chose to do the corporate career path. And I always knew at some point I would come back. I would always do something of my own. And so in 2019, I decided that was the time, just before the pandemic, and we didn't know the pandemic was coming. But I started off. I built a travel business, which failed miserably. First business.
That's when you learn the most, to be honest with you.
Oh, 100%.
I always say that. I had two businesses. I had one successful and one failure. I learned 100 times more on my failure than I did from the winner. Yeah. So I think you're more seasoned because you failed.
Yeah, I agree. And coming from a corporate background, it's not easy to fail when you're used to succeeding all the time. And especially for someone like me, I'm a high achiever. I love succeeding. So for me, that first failure was a very interesting learning pathway.
It's a little more personal, isn't it? When you fail as a high achiever, you immediately think the worst of yourself. And it becomes a battle internally rather than a battle externally.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, Sangeeta, can I stick to that point for 1 second? A lot of people are like, it's the culture. It's the culture that you have to succeed. You have to hit a home run right off the bat. There's events. I think there's actually this in Australia too, called Fuck Ups. I don't know if you guys have that.
Fuck Up Nights.
Yeah, Fuck Up Nights. Yeah, okay, so you guys have it. It's international and they embrace failure. Like that's their biggest quote. We have it here as well. And I love that. Like you should be embracing failure as an entrepreneur because that's when you learn the most and that's what really progresses you as a career. Yeah. So how much do you think has an impact from like for you and I agree with you. I'm the same with you as you. If I fail, I feel failure like internally. Do you think that's like a cultural thing or what do you think? Like, is it just what society kind of tells us?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of external pressure to succeed, right? Like, especially in our early 20s and 30s, we don't really define success for ourselves. We let other people define success for us.
True. Very true.
And then we stick to that as our frame of success. And I think over the last 4 years, one of my biggest learnings, and I've started multiple businesses. I've failed at multiple businesses in the last 4 years. And one of the things that I've learned is failure is not failure until you term it so, right? So
Yeah.
if you see it as a learning, okay, yeah, I tried this, it didn't work out, rather than saying I tried this and I failed. I think that's a big psychological switch as well. Like saying, okay,
Hmm.
I want to try this, but being ready that if you're trying something new, there are chances that you may not succeed. I
Yeah.
think that preparation mentally is so important. And so for me, in my book, I talk about this as well. When I say, learn, be ready to fail, but learn how to fail. Like you've got to
Yes.
learn how to fail as well, because you've got to prepare yourself. Like do things deliberately that you know you will fail at, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of starts changing your psyche. Because let's say you're shit at baking food, right,
Yeah.
or baking something. So try it. Go bake a cake and fail at it, and then laugh at yourself about it, right? So the more you learn to laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously, I think that becomes a good habit. It becomes a culture that you develop for yourself around
You know,
failure.
and one thing I always tell people is like taking on risk is okay because that is what entrepreneurs
Yes,
do at all times. I've said
100%.
it 100 times on this podcast. I'll say it again. Being an entrepreneur is like jumping off of a cliff with all the plane parts, and you just
Yeah,
kind of have to learn to assemble it without any instructions, right?
yeah,
But I also very much mention hope is not a strategy either. You can't just
yes.
make hope your strategy and like kind of throw
Yeah,
it. Has to be calculated risks. That's kind of like
yeah.
how I stick to it.
Yeah, 100%. I love calculated risks as well. And that's
Yeah.
stuff I talk about in the book too, is, understanding your financial runways, understanding, how you're getting
Oh yeah.
there. Because the two biggest things, there's this statistic out there about 90% of startups fail, right?
Yep.
And I think that is another thing that scares people about starting businesses or starting, or giving it a go is, 90% fail anyway. So, the thing
Yeah.
is that you should understand why those 90% fail. And the top reason that the 90%, the top two reasons, one is around financial mismanagement,
Yeah.
but the biggest is around people building things that other people don't want.
Yeah.
And once you and once you know that these two are the biggest reasons,
Yeah.
it's very easy then for you to strategize around them, right, and
Hmm.
do something better. Like you don't have to fall in those buckets.
I love that. Like what you just said is bang on because here's why. We're in software, right? So we do software specific, like we love software.
Yeah.
And we always tell our clients, first of all, 70% of startups in software world fail not because of financial, not because of anything other than product. So I love that
Yes.
you mentioned product because we always tell our clients, we're like, look, you don't know, don't perfect your product. There's nothing, you don't know anything. You
Yeah.
think you know stuff right now. You're gonna come to us in 6 months and say, I need to pivot. Go
Yeah.
out with the most basic, start trying to sell it. Once you start selling it, you'll get the feedback. You'll understand what the biggest concern is, and then you can start
Yeah.
working towards it. But I,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you. I love that statement. And financial, 100% it's financial.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
burn all their cash on the product and then they have no money
Oh,
for runway, they have no money for
yeah.
product or sorry,
Yeah.
sales, marketing, nothing, right?
And often people also do that with their own personal finances, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I've got, $15,000 or $20,000 in the bank. I'm going to put it all in this because you know what? The bigger the risk I take, the better my business will turn out. But the
Yeah.
reality is, you've got to take calculated risks, like you
Yeah.
said before. It's like, how much can you really afford to lose? It's a bit like, when you go into the casino and you want to bet on
Yeah.
things, but you've got to set yourself a limit, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and you have to realize that you do still have to live. As much as entrepreneurs love to
correct.
like grind it, bootstrap it, sure, you can reduce your level of expense. Absolutely. Don't get an office for sure. I'm with you
Yeah.
on all that. But the biggest thing is going to be not having the money to even pay for yourself to live because as much as
Yeah.
you're not making income from the company because you can't.
Yeah.
I would say first year you're not making money for yourself
Yes.
because there is no money to
Yeah.
be had. You need to survive for a year. And a lot of people
Yes.
don't put that in their calculation. You're totally correct.
Yeah.
So in the book Start Right, I've kind of started reading it. And I actually love everything you've said in there. I love the approach you're taking. So how did you come up with the approach? Because you do take a kind of you take that big step of like here's where you need to be, and then you can narrow it down slowly. So what exactly is your process and how do you see that in your head?
Yeah, sure. So this is the book called
Yep.
Start Right. How to
Yeah,
pick a
we're
winning
gonna
business
we're gonna
idea.
add that link as well for all the listeners. So make sure you see it in our. If you're watching YouTube, we'll have that link for you on Amazon or something like
Yeah.
that for you.
This might be revamped. I'm reworking on the cover a little bit, but it's essentially the book remains the same, right? And the book is called Start Right, How to Pick a
Yeah.
Winning Business Idea and Make It Successful. And in this, I talk about a framework called the 3 pillars of success,
Yeah.
which is mindset, strategy, and execution.
Yes.
And every founder, every business needs these 3 key things: mindset, strategy, and execution. But you always start with the mindset, because that is the most important thing when it comes to being an entrepreneur, being a founder, being a business owner. Your
Ironically,
mindset
that's
is,
the one skipped the most.
yes, it is.
It is.
And so my second book is going to be set heavily on the mindset piece. And I'm doing a lot of
Love
research
that.
around that now, because the more and more I work with entrepreneurs, the more and more I realize the strategy and the execution, like that has been done over and over again by so
Yep.
many people. Like you can use, there's multiple ways of doing things.
Mhm.
But if you're not in the right mindset as a founder, if you don't know where you're headed, you don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and you don't push yourself out of your boundaries to
Yeah.
do it, that's where a lot of the business failure happens, a lot of the personal failure happens, right? And so mindset is important.
The 3 things I always say to entrepreneurs is, and we do this in our workshop, is realize that this is not going to be easy, because a lot of people sometimes I realize early on, a lot of startups will come into being an entrepreneur because they're just like, yeah, it's software, it's easy, it's easy to be an entrepreneur. Okay, well, if it was, there wouldn't be a 90% failure rate. And then the second thing I say is grit. Like you have to be able to push through the lows. You can enjoy the highs, but there's going to be a lot more lows than highs. So you got to have the, I guess, in your case, mindset to be able to push through that. And then thirdly is clear objectives. They really don't have any. It's like sometimes you talk to them and they're like, I just want to make this $1 billion business. And you're just like, that's not an objective. I mean, that's the result of your objective if you achieve it.
Yeah. And so in the book, there's the 2 things that I spoke about earlier as well, the knowing what your customer needs and building for what your customer needs, and financial management. Those are the 2 key things I tackle in the book as well, because I think, like I said before, if you know how to work through the 2 biggest reasons businesses fail, you're already on a good path, right? So this guide or this book is meant to be a guide, a roadmap, to help people, because a lot of times I hear people come to me, a lot of times I hear founders come to me and just go full steam at their idea, and like, I've got this brilliant idea, this is what I'm like, okay, so how many people have you spoken to about your idea? How many people have you spoken to? Do you have any people who've said, yes, we love the idea? They're like, no, but this is common sense. Like, this is logical. It's got to work out. I'm like, no, it's not got to work out.
You know what's a good response to that? Because I get that all the time where people are like, no, it just makes sense. It's like, hey, do you know how common sense is? And they're like, not very common. I'm like, exactly. Neither does your sense, right? You have to validate. You can share this with your entrepreneurs, but we always tell them, get a product advisory board. Just go to find 5 customers willing to just join you in your adventure. You don't even have to charge them, nothing like that. Just make sure that you're solving their problem, and then that'll solve itself.
100%. And I think the number of people that sit in their homes or in their offices and build things before they even speak to one customer, I think that is, it's mind-blowing that, there's a lot been told about that. There's a lot been said about that by so many people that, hey, the first thing you need to do is you focus on your customer. But I think it's how is where people struggle, right? How do we do that? How do we actually get out there and speak to people? And most people are scared of speaking to people. They're scared of getting out there and having the conversation.
Because it's their baby. It's the fear of rejection, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's they don't want to be told, hey, I actually don't need this. I agree with you. Like every time we start a project, the first thing we do is, hey, give me 5 or 6 people that are willing to pay for something like this. And we want them to be part of our team to like kind of work with us to build this out every time, every single time. If you can't even, and to be honest, most founders can't even get us the 5 people. Like it's very like, you know what I mean? And that's the validation. But that's why we always tell them, and they get upset with us, and we're like, look, you can either make this a strategic plan and actually
Yeah.
like build something that people want, or you're just going to make this a very expensive hobby.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like I get people, like a lot of times my mentees would ask me, they're like, hey Sangeeta, so how many people, so this whole concept of customer discovery, getting out there and doing the customer discovery, talking to people, and not talking about your product, not talking about the solution, just understanding the problem. And very often I get this question, so how many people do we need to speak to? I'm like, 100, 1,000? Like,
More.
it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
just go get out there and talk to people, right?
Yeah.
And the more you talk to them, the more sense you will get for what works, what doesn't work, how it works, and things like that.
Yeah.
And don't worry about even building anything before you sell it, because that's the other piece that I'm a big fan of, is selling before you build. Will people buy
Yeah.
it? Even if it's an idea that solves the problem they have, if it's a real need in the market, people will pay you for it even before you've built anything.
Yeah,
and it's
and I
wrap your heads around that.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I think with today's world though, there's so many solutions of all sorts, and
Yeah.
I'm specifically more talking like software, where like
Yeah.
everyone gets approached for every idea now, and it's
Yeah.
like I think people have gotten burned because again, it's hard to make product. Product is not easy.
Yes.
A lot of people think
Yeah.
software is easy. It's not. It's very challenging, and
Yeah.
they'll get that payment, and then they don't deliver. And
Mhm.
software development, like, oh, it'll be done in 9 months. That's what my
Yeah.
developers told me. It's usually ends up
Yes.
with 12 months or 18
Yes,
months.
of course. Yeah.
Right. But if you can get someone to truly engage with the product, that's why we go with the product advisory board, because now
Yeah.
you're building it with them. And when you build
Yes.
it with them, they're giving you all their problems because they have nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and people love talking about themselves. So when they're talking and saying, yeah, like, ooh, I like that, but like you should add this because that's not really that important for me. Boom, there's
Yeah.
your roadmap. There's like
Yes.
a concept of your roadmap. And you will end up building something they'll pay for because they built it. They helped you build it.
100%.
Right.
100%. I think co-creation is the way to go, right? And I think
Yeah.
people often don't fully understand the power of that. But also, to your point before, I think it's that fear of rejection of,
Yeah.
people saying, oh, but it's your business. Why should I help you build it?
Yeah.
The honest truth is, like, people would love being part of something different,
Yes.
something new.
100%.
And just get out there and ask them, if you feel like, hey, they're able to articulate the problem properly, you feel like, yep, this person's going to be valuable to help me building the product, I think 100% bringing them on board is the way to go.
Yeah, no. And how do you guys do it at Jumpstart Studios? So like you guys bring in, help entrepreneurs, get them kind of set up. What's the process you guys take? And actually not the process, because I mean, you can speak about process, but
Yeah.
what do you guys find most important when starting a startup? Because I have my top 4 things and I'll kind of share it with you. I'm just curious to hear what yours are, because everybody kind of has a slight difference, right?
So when I started Jumpstart Studio, it was in the middle of the pandemic. It was in 2021. And it came out of the fact that I was doing a lot of pro bono coaching across many pre-accelerator programs here in Melbourne. And I was just getting asked the same questions over and over again. I was getting approached by corporate professionals because I was in corporates before.
Yep.
I'd get approached and say, hey, Sangeeta, how did you do it? We want to do it. Can you help us? And that's really where the idea stemmed from for Jumpstart Studio. It was like, okay, let's sort of create this space where people can come in, share their ideas. We help them get out there and do market validation. So get out there, do your market validation, get your customer discovery in place, get all the information we need, and all those early stage things that people are scared to do, but need somebody to hold them accountable to do it as well. And so that's really the biggest sort of value offering is, we hold them accountable to get out there and, do the work that they need to do, the legwork that they need to do. And once they've sort of come back, and then we sit down and do the insights, do the analysis and say, hey, okay, this is what it's shaping up to be. What do you think about this? And then we do the experimentation, we do prototyping, prototyping, all of that stuff. And we sort of have partners that we work with who are, legal, accounting, all
early
the other
access
stuff.
kind of. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Correct. So, setting up a business, setting, things up for them. So that's really where Jumpstart Studio comes in. And over the years, what I've learned is previously I would take on, anybody who came to me with an exciting idea and I'd be like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was pretty early on my journey as well. But as time has gone by, I'm starting to do a lot more,
Vetting.
previously I would just get them on early. And now it's more like, okay, let's do a 4-week thing where I will test if you really want to be an entrepreneur. Because a lot of times people come in and they would say they want to be entrepreneurs, but to be honest, like it's not top priority in their life. And if it's not top priority for you, it's not, don't expect it to be top priority for me.
So it's funny you say that, Sangeeta, because that's literally every single angel's experience. When they first get into the space, they're like, oh my God, every single new, yes, like, let's go.
Yeah.
And then they slowly but surely learn, okay, I need to vet this a little bit better.
Yeah.
And it really does, at the end of the day, come down to the founders, because sometimes founders are very good salespeople.
Yes.
And that's really what you want from them. But like sometimes they're like, they oversell themselves, which is the issue. Not the vision, but themselves. And then you kind of, you're like, ooh, I'm gonna go with this guy. He's gonna make it, he's gonna cross the line. And then, tough times, they immediately abandon ship, right?
Yeah. And I think like over the last, in like 4 to 6 weeks, where what I've seen in the last few years is in the 4 to 6 weeks, I think is the sweet spot, right?
Nice.
I think if people can stay the course for 4 to 6 weeks, really double down on what I'm asking them to do. And I can see that, like I work with so many founders all the time. I can see really clear differences between, who I know is going to be a winning founder versus somebody who I know is just not there. Like
okay. So what is that? What are you looking at?
So I'm looking
or
at
is that your secret sauce? I'm just I
mean, I don't think there are any secrets in the space, right? And I feel like, entrepreneurs need to share with each other. But I think for me, it's very clear. Like, So the first thing is, I think, like I said, people need to double down, right? So if I tell them, hey, I want you to get out and do this, this, and this, and they come back to me a week later and they've done, more than that. They've done, like they've gone out of the way. Like I say, okay, I need you to get 40 customer interviews in a week. And they come back to me, okay, Sangeeta, we've interviewed 150 people. I'm like, boom, yes. I like you, right? You've done the legwork. I just need to see that people are committed to this more than I'm committed to this, because it's their baby after all, right? It's their business after all.
You're helping them grow their vision. They should be working harder than you.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's definitely the first thing. This the commitment piece is important to me. The second piece that is super important to me is the fact that they don't rely on me for execution, because that's not my job. Right. My job is to hold you accountable and push you and show you the way to do it, open the doors for you if necessary, not to do it for you. And so for me, people who don't rely on me to do it for them, I think they're the most successful founders. And I can, like, in my head, I'm already thinking of this is Lady Amy, this is Guy Mohammed. So all these guys, like, I'm just sort of thinking of the common traits they have. And one of the biggest things for them is they execute, and they execute because they own it. Like there's this ownership around what they do, right?
Interesting.
And so that is important when it comes to business. And the third thing I think I would say is, I think it's that grit piece that you spoke about. But it's more than the grit. I think it is more about, like they really want this to happen. Like there's this burning desire. A passion, a burning desire to bring this to life. Like, and there's something driving it, right? And usually within the 4 to 6 weeks, I discover what that is. It could be a personal story. It could be something that's happened in their past. It could be something that's really impacted them in their personal lives. And so I feel like if people don't have that personal connection to the purpose, it becomes difficult.
I could not agree more. I think you have the perfect recipe where you're trying to discover grit, right? The execution side, working past the 4 weeks or the 6 weeks. To me, that's grit. That's you're pushing through, because in 6 months, or sorry, 6 weeks, even 6 months, you will see a ton of downfalls and highs and lows. So you're right. Like if you can work through that, you're in it. And then on the passion side, I could not agree more with you. because I think passion is what actually, it's so funny that you're saying this on this podcast, because I just had a podcast, which is going to go before yours, which is going to be
Yeah.
perfect. But I was literally telling her, she's a founder herself. And I literally told her, I said, the reason I believe in you very much, and I believe that you're going to take it to the next level, is your passion. You will not quit because this is your mission to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Right? It has nothing to do with money. It's not like that's just something that's going to follow through with her. But the reason she does it is not because she can make X amount of dollars. She's doing it strictly because she loves caregivers, or, her business is regarding around caregivers. I love that. I could not agree more with you, Sangeeta. So I appreciate you saying that. So I'll tell you what I look at. And I'm kind of more general, I guess. You're very specific on the founder, which I love. But when I'm looking at a business, because we get pitched all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I'm looking at is four things. One is, and I would love your opinion on this. One is timing of the product. Is the market ready for something like this? And that comes down to the product advisory board and just having customers. Two is the founder. And one thing I really appreciate about you is that being a founder is a very lonely world, right? And you're really trying to give them that guidance so that they're not alone. Because that is 90% of the problem, I would say, with founders, is that they feel lonely because they have to figure out where they have to go themselves. They don't have guidance. They don't have that person to kind of just give them the next step or potential steps. So I love that. And then thirdly is go-to-market strategy, which I find is more important than the product itself, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think, so once you pass the founder, like for me, the founder is super important, right? And
so your number one is founder.
Number one is founder.
I love that.
And then there's this 3 T's philosophy, which is team, timing, and TAM.
There you go. Okay.
And so it's similar to what you said, right? So
it's exactly.
You've got founder, the team, and then you've got the timing, which is exactly what you said. Is the timing right for this product? And that's once I've sort of vetted the founder. Then we start talking about the timing, and sometimes they're too far ahead, for what the market is ready for at this point, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that they need to stop. What that means is they just need to pivot, or they just need to sort of understand where
they need to plan around it.
That's it, and meet the market where they are, right? So I think timing is all about strategizing around timing. So a lot of times people think, oh, timing is wrong. We're too early. You're like, you may be too early for the full suite of things that you're doing, but maybe this piece here can be monetized already, right? So don't shy away. And then the third thing is around the TAM, or the size of the market. So to your point around go-to-market strategies, how do we then go to market? What size is this market now? And then do we see that in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, this market size will increase? Where is it going to go? And so the scalability aspect is important, because that's where the timing, the market comes in, or the TAM comes in, right? Which is the total available market, for those who don't understand the terminology. But it's just about saying, how big is this market? How many people are willing to sort of pay to get this problem solved? And usually there's, there are smaller markets, there are bigger markets, and you can build business in any market. I'm not saying you can't, but it's the bigger the TAM, the more scalable your product. And the more scalable your product, the better you can expect to sort of, think about, if you want to be like the scalable business, then, you need a big TAM. But if you just want to be a small business and you're happy to, scale to a certain level and then stay there, I think that's perfectly fine too. I think, not every business needs to be global. Not every business needs to be scalable.
Try telling that to founders. And it's kind of ridiculous, because there's situations where, you have founders or startups who have reached the level of $32 million in ARR, right?
Yeah, wow.
And they're doing amazing, but they just won't quit on the scaling. And so they overspend. And I'm like, if you can drop your monthly cost down to $1 million, which is a lot, by the way, if you are spending at a software level $12 million a year, you have a solid team behind you.
Yeah.
If you drop it to that, you alone are making 12 million in net.
Yeah.
But that's not how they think. They're just pruned to think about growth at all costs. Like, I got to keep growing, otherwise I can't raise the capital. But then you're looking at them going, okay, your next raise is going to be 100 million, but in 5 years you'll be at 100 million if you just cut costs.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So I personally don't understand that. I think you're right.
Yeah.
It needs to be planned in terms of what is your game plan, because it's not always about scale. Like, sometimes TAM does not allow you to scale. You just have to realize that, having a $32 million in revenue is a very good business. And you don't need to spend so much, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, there's this whole culture that has been created around scaling.
Yes.
And growth, especially by these larger businesses like Facebook, Amazon, Uber.
All of them.
People look at them and go like, oh, that's where I want to be. I want to be like Uber. But if you actually dig into their financials, some of these Uber hasn't made a profit, hasn't made $1 in profit, right? In the last
very reliant on investor money. Yeah, very reliant.
100%. But the point is, you're blowing up a lot of investment money, but your business is not profitable. And tomorrow, if the investment stops, you're done for.
Yep.
Right.
What are your thoughts about investment right now in today's world? Because I think I have written about this. I think the world of grow at all costs VC money is unless you're in AI. I think now they're jumping all that kind of cash into AI. But I think with software, you're going to have to show how can you be profitable at even Series A or B.
Yeah. And I think it's just good practice for any founder to be profitable as early as you can, right?
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a concept of ramen profitability that I talk about in my book, which was coined by Y Combinator for Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
When the founders of Airbnb were sort of, getting to profitability in the early stages, there was this concept of ramen profitability coined, which basically means that, if you can feed yourself, you've got to be profitable enough to feed yourself. Even if you're feeding yourself ramen, like instant noodles, that's good enough.
But you're still feeding.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. You've got to be profitable, right? You're not eating from the investors' money.
Yeah. I think net zero is perfectly good strategy. Like, if you can keep your costs at the level of revenue, fine. And you're growing, great. It makes sense.
Great.
But you shouldn't be in negative. 100% I'm with you on that. Because you're not always guaranteed to raise that next capital. And right now, that is the issue. Right now, those Series B, C, Ds can't raise their next round, which means they have to cut costs. And then they're cutting costs in the weirdest spots too, which is like really hindering their growth. But, I'm with you on
100%,
that.
100%. And I think one of the things that people don't like, I think VC money, like, there's two types, right? There's smart money and there's dumb money.
Yeah.
And there's money that,
there's FOMO money too. Don't forget about FOMO money.
FOMO money
the
too.
Chasers.
Yes, that too.
The chasers. I call them the chasers.
Yeah. And so, just being really smart about the kind of money you're taking from the market.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big fan of bootstrapping, right? 100%.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the more you can bootstrap, the better your business, because you get control, you keep it all. But people are fascinated by the fact that, my friend raised $10 million, or, so-and-so raised 20 million. I need to raise more money. I need
quick
to raise
cash
more money.
schemes, right?
Yeah. But the point is, your business is not the same as their business. And your goals may not be the same as their goals. And this is why you need a coach, or you need somebody who can, show you that big picture lens and show you, hey, you start talking about goals. It's like when you go to a personal trainer or when you go to a fitness expert, right? The first thing they ask you is, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Right?
I call it the objective. I hate calling it the goal, because as soon as you say goal, people instantly think SMART goal. Like, I have to, like, no, just what are you trying to do? What's your objective? What are you trying to achieve?
Correct.
That's all I need to know. You can make the other stuff happen. You just need to know where's your starting point? Where's your end point? Where you want to be that.
That's
good.
It.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, if you don't know where you're going, you will just follow again, like I said, conditioning happens because of what we see around us. And, people, the society or the environment we're in conditions us and and defines our success. But you've got to stop that from happening. As an entrepreneur, you've got to define your own success and be happy with it. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what other businesses are doing. Like, stop looking at what other businesses are doing. I think what you've got to look at is, what do I want to achieve from my business? And draw your own sort of, objective, draw your own success story and say, if I make $32 million in ARR, I'm successful,
Yeah.
and that's good enough for me. You don't have to be at $1 billion. You
No.
don't.
No.
And I think
You really
that's
don't.
the thing.
Because you can
Yeah.
live a wonderful life if you're making $20
Yeah.
million in net every year.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Like you can even do 10 million and you will still
Yes.
do beautifully in life.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It comes down to the fact that everyone looks at software like, I have to scale it as large as possible. And what people don't realize is you can be fifth in the market, you can be sixth in the market. The food delivery business the TAM is billions of dollars. I would say hundreds of billions. And you have businesses that are worth billions, but they're fifth, sixth place, right?
Yeah.
They're not the Ubers, they're not the DoorDashes, but they have they have some market share, but they're still worth billion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Like, you don't have to be number one anymore. I think the fact that the society has adopted technology after COVID specifically, you can be fifth and still be very successful. And you're right, getting that mindset out of your head that I have to be number one, I have to be the biggest, it just sometimes doesn't make sense. And if you can do it, but do it with net zero. Don't do it with negative income.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah. One of the things I ask a lot of the founders that come to me and say, we want to be number one, in this market or whatever. I'm like, and then what?
Yeah.
Once you're number
then
one,
you turn crazy.
What happens, right? Tell me what happens.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think this came from a very personal realization, because I was on a talent program in one of the corporates here at a bank, and it was a pathway to becoming CEO of the bank here. And so I was on that program and I was climbing the corporate ladder quite quickly. And for me, at some point in my life, when I took that pivot and started going into entrepreneurship, I think the question I asked myself was exactly that: was, okay, so even if I become the CEO of this bank, so what?
What happens
then
next?
What?
Yeah.
Right. There's this.
Where's the fulfillment?
Where is the fulfillment? But also, it's like, there's a goalpost that's been set, and then you're just working towards the goalpost. But once you reach the goal, what happens next? You
No
can't
one
go
plans
any higher,
that.
right? You can't go any higher, so you're probably going to have to come down, or you're going to have to just stay there and be happy with staying there. But if you've been conditioned to keep climbing all the time, are you going to be happy there?
Yeah, probably not. And that typically happens a lot, right? With the founders, is they'll set a goal, they'll achieve it, and they're like, okay, well, next. And there's never full fulfillment. You never reach the point of, oh, I'm done. That was great. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Now I'm going to focus on my family or focus on my, whatever. And they do not take that time to really enjoy their successes. You're beyond correct on that. I love that you say that. And that's how I can tell you, and you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, by the way, because that's exactly I love that. I love that. Sangeeta, we've been chatting for 40 minutes, which is amazing. I just looked at I was like, oh my God. So usually the podcasts are 30 minutes. So talking with you is just natural. Amazing. Really appreciate it. Is there any advice you could give entrepreneurs? Like, if you were to meet an entrepreneur tomorrow and he says, look, I just want one piece of advice, the do's and the don'ts, what would you say to him or her?
Ooh,
the person.
That's tricky. Yeah, the person. That's tricky because it depends on where they are on their journey, right? But if there's one generic advice, if anything, I would say it's, focus on yourself. Like, don't worry about what's around you. Think about what you want and go after that. I think one of the biggest things that for me personally is, having done the corporate lifestyle, the startup lifestyle, and working with different startup founders, I think one of the biggest things that we take for granted is our health. And you touched on that a little earlier as well, in terms of, taking care of your family and things like that. And I think really understanding what's important to you, is the first step. Is my family, what's my key priority? Is it family? Is it my health? Is it, my spouse? Like, whoever it may be, like, just have a very clear priority list. And if your business and startup sits on the third or the fourth priority after family, after your health, it's okay.
Yeah.
And just remember that, that's where it sits. So every now and again, as an entrepreneur, the first thing that I do this very often is, if on a Wednesday I don't want to do any work, I just shut
Don't.
everything and I say,
Yeah.
that's it. I'm not responding to people. Nothing will happen. If you take time off work for
Yeah.
a day or two, the world still turns around. You'll come back and you'll still have emails in your inbox to respond
It
to.
never
You'll still
ends.
have people. It never ends.
It never
So
ends.
you've got to make sure you prioritize yourself first.
So it's funny you say that with the health thing. I just want to chime in one little second here.
Yes.
With it's we as entrepreneurs, we sacrifice our health to be entrepreneurs, only to use the money we made from being an entrepreneur to heal all the pain we cause, whether it be family, whether it be divorce, whether it be whatever you want to call it. But sometimes we get a little tunnel vision and really ignore everything else. And I agree with you. I think you need to know, okay, when to shut down, when to just let it be. Like if your wife is getting agitated with you because you haven't spent time with them, drop everything you got, because that wife is going to be expensive in the next couple of years, that, maybe a divorce happens or something like that. So I'm with you on that. And it never ends. You're right. Don't ever try to be net. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think also, like, you've got to understand that if you're not healthy, your business is not healthy.
No, I agree.
Right. So I think that if there's one sort of line that I would like to leave you with is, to build a healthy business, you need to have a healthy mind and a healthy body. And so focus on that first.
Agreed. And you'll see those people who are very conscious of their mental and their physical health, and they can outlast any entrepreneur that ignores all those. Outlast. That's the key, is consistency. You can be better than that person for 3 or 4 months, but guess what? After the 4 months, you're going to be so burnt out, you're going to be useless for a month or two. Whereas he's just going to be consistently good. Consistency is the key. I love it. Sangeeta, thank you so much for being here on our podcast. I really appreciate you being here all the way from Australia. And right now it's morning, nighttime. What is it for you guys?
Yeah, it's about 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay. All right. That's not too bad. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us and giving all the insight you had on your experience. Also, for sharing what's in Start Right. Do you want to hold the copy again just so everybody can see it? Again, she wrote the book on Start Right that helps you guides you from how to approach startup. And I think, Sangeeta, that's one thing most people miss. So I appreciate you writing that book. Anything to help the community, I'm always in. And we'll definitely post that on our Discord as well, and kind of blast it with it. So hopefully some people take away what they can from your book.
Thank you, Sepehr. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks
for having me. Thank you so much. And to everybody else at the Founders Corner, thank you guys for joining and chiming in and listening to Sangeeta and I speak. If you have any comments, thoughts, please leave them in comments below. We'd love to listen to what you guys have to say. If you guys have a question for Sangeeta, please let it be in the comments, and we'll definitely push it towards her and she can answer it in any way she can. Otherwise, until next time, subscribe, like, and share with whoever you think would take some advantage from this video. Until next time, Korner out.